And then where can we apply technology or team members or other things to that core business mission to make it better? And I think a lot of times, if you're like me, when I had Lucky Charms as a kid, it always had the little Hot Wheels car in it. And there was two ways you could get that Hot Wheels car. One, you could eat all the Lucky Charms, or the other way that was always more interesting to me was you could flip the Lucky Charms box upside down because the card was the heaviest. It would fall to the bottom. If you opened it from the bottom, the card would be sitting there on top. And I think a lot of us, when we see that shiny new technology or trend or whatever it might be, we open the cereal box from the bottom so that way we get the card. But sometimes the thing that is most valuable is eating through every piece of those Lucky Charms, including not just the marshmallows, but the other part.
Your business's success depends on relationships with customers, relationships with employees, and relationships with stakeholders. What do they all have in common? They're all human. Because no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Welcome to the Human Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Carl Ponto. Each week I bring you stories, insights, and practical advice from experts that you can apply to your growing company and daily life. This week I'm excited to connect with Ryan Vett. He is a USA Today bestselling author, entrepreneur, and generational futurist who helps leaders stay relevant in a rapidly changing world. He's delivered over 1,000 presentations across 4 continents, led companies from startup to hundreds of millions in valuation, and now studies how generational shifts shape leadership, culture, and the future of work. Congrats on helping leaders stay relevant in a rapidly changing world, and welcome to the Human Connection Podcast.
Thanks so much, Carl. Excited to be here.
I'm really excited to have you on the show because it's one of the things I think you're a perfect person to talk about is how it's so easy to get swept up in all the changes and new things going on in the world as a leader, and trying to keep track of those is almost impossible. So what are some of the kind of wrong questions that leaders get stuck asking when they're looking at how to move their companies forward?
That's a great question. And I would say if you look at my personality type and me as a leader, as I've led teams of all sizes, I'm a visionary. I like the big ideas. I like to dream for the future. And I also have shiny object syndrome. Any new thing that's sparkly and exciting, like I will immediately pivot and try to implement it. And that's just been a big part of who I am as an individual and my personality. And over the past several years, as I've shifted out of operational day-to-day leadership after an exit event and really have turned to helping other leaders who are operating on a day-to-day basis, one of the things that I keep seeing is they're asking, hey, what new technology do I need to implement? Or what's wrong with the next generation? Or how does AI best leveraged in my business? And I think those questions are all okay to ask. We need to ask those as leaders. But I think they're not the right question to start with. I think the right question to start with is, what is not going to change as a result of the changing times? I'll say that again. What is not going to change as a result of the changing times? Because when we get into business, in the podcast name and even your intro was so perfect, we have always interacted in human-to-human interactions. That is how we exist as human beings. We were designed to be in community with one another, to interact with one another. And yes, we can use technology and efficiencies to streamline those processes. But if we keep asking what's going to change, we lose sight of why we started out on the journey in the first place. And that's what's not going to change. What is the core business that regardless of technology, regardless of changes, this is the one thing that I'm doing and will do basically no matter what happens.
Yeah, because I think when you get distracted by all the new changes and the shiny object syndrome, like you put it, you lose track of the thing that got you where you are, that like the core business principles or the experience for the customers or clients, or the quality of the product or service. And when you start making concessions or compensating that in search of something new and shiny, you realize that the foundation that you're trying to build on top of is now eroded because you're no longer delivering the expected results that your customers or clients originally started working with you for. And so it's easy. I can see how those distractions undercut the success that you think you're going to get by focusing on them.
Exactly. And I think a lot of people will say, even in technology businesses or more modern businesses, they start to pivot and say, oh, we don't need to ask the way it's always been done because we're innovative, we're changing. But even if you think of a software company is streamlining a process. Look at social media. They were trying to connect people. That was their core goal. Make it easier to communicate, easier to connect, easier to share photos. If you look at software companies, it's to streamline this process or anything like that. So yes, as technology advances and as artificial intelligence continues to become more cost effective and easier to implement, and more people are comfortable with it, while also a growing cohort are uncomfortable with it, you have to stop asking, hey, what's the new thing that we need to jump on, but how can these new things benefit what we've already been doing?
Yeah, because especially these days with how unstable and uncertain things are, when if you're trying to deliver or kind of keep the customers you have and attract more of the ones that you want, offering something that gives some of that sense of stability and reliability and builds a loyal community around the brand of your business, that sort of thing, that is a lot more appealing than you think, compared to all the messages of new shiny, but then they don't really last because everyone who's interested in those things keeps moving on to the next shiny thing and doesn't really get the full sense of community or connection. They're kind of left empty because it's just that like anticipation loop that we're
Right.
all kind of stuck in, and it's kind of manipulative and always leaves a bad taste in your mouth in a way, and you aren't actually getting what you think you're getting from that, or what you really need from a base human psychological safety level. And it's when people actually do finally find something that provides what they've been missing and they're not getting from constantly chasing the hype, then you'll find that your business is a lot better off and a lot stronger because you're actually delivering something of value, not just hyped up.
Yeah, you're exactly correct, and I think that's the key. What is the value that we're providing? And I'll share a story of a failure maybe that I've had, one
Mm-hmm.
of many, but I'll just share one. And I was distracted by shiny object syndrome. We had some new technology available to us, and I've been in the AI space in one form, shape, or another for well over a decade, almost 2 decades now, long before it became a household term in the early 2020s. And we implemented this new technology. Everyone was so excited about it. And yet, our core business at that point was connecting humans and making sure that human interactions were more robust and went deeper. And that was the whole gist of our organization, was to connect individuals in pursuing similar pathways. And we implemented this AI technology effectively that matched people virtually, but it took away the whole in-person networking. It took away the whole connection that built trust and everything else. So all of a sudden, all these people had weak connections, and it really hurt our growth. It went backwards because people wanted that real communication, that real interaction, that real human connection. And when we remove that with technology, trying to remove friction, trying to make it easier, trying to make it faster, that whole necessary element of trust, which is so important to relationships, was completely eliminated and removed, which is why technology was great. It did allow us to go faster, but it didn't actually solve the problem that we were created to solve almost 30 years ago with that company, when that company first started.
Yeah, I think that's a great example of I think also what happened with social media. The idea is, you're just able to connect with people across distances, but now there's less connection, less kind of community, because the tools that made it easier and faster and more streamlined removed the quality, removed the depth of the connection, and removed the humanity from it. And so it makes a lot of sense that you had that result, because part of what makes it valuable, just from a psychological standpoint, is the effort required to build it. And if it's something that it's only takes you a few clicks, or you're automatically matched with someone, you don't necessarily value it as much as if you know that you had to work for it, or that you made the effort to investment to go to like an event and meet someone in person, or you had to reach out and write messages. If it's all streamlined and automated, then the whole experience is cheapened in
Yeah.
both people's minds. And if it's, so it's a weird, like, kind of aspect of human nature where we want things to be quicker and faster and easier, but when they are, we value them less, and the experience isn't as rewarding. So there's this, you got to find that balance point where it's not too difficult that people won't do it or can't do it, but it's not so easy that they don't value it.
Yep.
And I think it's definitely more on the side of it's things are, people are focusing too much on the quick and easy, but then they realize that they undercut the value, and now there's this lack of caring and empathy and lack of connection because the value of the relationships isn't there anymore.
You're exactly right. I think Will Gadara, to put it in a practical standpoint, does this so well with his book Unreasonable Hospitality. And if you've ever heard him speak or interviewed, he talks about how he would make everyone write every single touch of the customer journey. And the whole idea was, what is that thing that we can do to provide hospitality to the next level, unreasonable hospitality? And he would make his team write these things. And I believe, I might be fabricating part of this, but I think he said he made them write over 1,000 customer interactions or guest interactions just to get down to those, what are those things that we can improve? And so he did it right. What are those things that are core to our business and providing that hospitality? And then where can we apply technology or team members or other things to that core business mission to make it better? And I think a lot of times, if you're like me, when I had Lucky Charms as a kid, it always had the little Hot Wheels car in it. And there was two ways you could get that Hot Wheels car. One, you could eat all the Lucky Charms, or the other way that was always more interesting to me was you could flip the Lucky Charms box upside down because the card was the heaviest. It would fall to the bottom. If you opened it from the bottom, the card would be sitting there on top. And I think a lot of us, when we see that shiny new technology or trend or whatever it might be, we open the cereal box from the bottom so that way we get the card. But sometimes the thing that is most valuable is eating through every piece of those Lucky Charms, including not just the marshmallows, but the other part, so that you have the full picture. And then at the end, your reward is the car. And I think we sometimes do that backwards.
Yeah, that's a great anecdote because the toy at the bottom, flipping the box, and it always felt like such an amazing hack when you realize, oh my gosh, I'm so clever, I figured I can open the bottom of the box, and then I get the toy right away. But then you said like the you don't care about it as much because you don't have to put the effort in of eating all the cereal, and there's not that, even some anticipation buildup of them getting close to the bottom and stuff, and the sense of accomplishing a task and putting the work in, we get a reward from actually doing actual effort and seeing the result. If it's so, yeah, I think it's something that, and I love that example of having your team write down all the touch points of a customer experience. I can see how in hospitality it's really valuable because there's so many little tiny experiences that people go through when they're visiting like a hotel or something like that. And if anyone wants, there's a whole like Tales from the Front Desk subreddit with a bunch of great stories of client experience or customer experience gone wrong. But it's I think for any business, understanding and putting the time to understand their client's experience and realizing where, and being more strategic about how they implement technology, not just what a lot of companies have done lately with AI, which is just trying to slap it in wherever they can, including like Microsoft, where they try to add their Gemini stuff to like Paint and like Notepad, where it's like, no one's going to be using, why are you trying to force it in? There's a big backlash about that. But it's like, I think it's part of it is just because it seems so haphazard. And so if it's actually, you're looking at, if your goal is just to slap it in because it's trend chasing and it's hyped, and you want to be able to get on that hype train, then yeah, it's going to likely backfire. But I think when it's strategic and it's thought about, like, and there's actual, like, how does this enhance the value we don't want to change, the result we don't want to change that we're delivering to our clients. Like IKEA had a great story a few weeks ago of there were like 8,500 employees that were doing this job that they were, instead of replacing them with AI, they basically upskilled them all to basically make them all interior decorators. So they're able to get a lot more productive and have amazing output from this team without letting anyone go. They just upscaled their jobs to deliver more value than they were before. And
Huh.
so it was this amazing impact that the tool had, because it wasn't just slapped on. It wasn't an excuse to let a bunch of people go and try and replace them. It was, we're trying to get this result. How can we implement this tool in a thoughtful way that will magnify the result we don't want to change? We just want it to get improve this result instead of changing what we're doing. And so I think that's kind of a good example of what you're talking about earlier about how when it's implemented strategically and it's understanding the experience of what you're really trying to accomplish, then you actually can get great results with these tools. But if you're just the trend chasing or shiny object syndrome, it's rarely ever going to work.
Yeah. If you're always chasing the trend, you're not ever going to set the trend. And I think that's really, really important. Doesn't mean you can't use new things or trendy things, but if you're always chasing a trend, that means you're a follower and you're only thinking of what other people are doing. You're not thinking about where you can get out ahead and lead. And I think that's just one of the risks of someone who does have shiny object syndrome like me. Like it's natural. You're naturally inclined to the cool, new, fun toy or opening the box from the bottom up. But if you really want to make a difference, you look at Steve Jobs and he, the story in Walter Isaacson's biography on him says that he created the form of the MacBook Pro and then gave it to his engineering team and said, make the battery and the chips and the screen fit inside of this, and just did it backwards to have high quality and just, he made it a lifestyle. It was no longer about, the RAM processing speed and the storage and all of this and the resolution. It was, you have a screen so vibrant, you can see X, Y, and Z. You have a computer so fast, you can do this many songs in this amount of time or edit this many videos. It just changed the whole concept. And it took well over a decade for everyone else in the computing and phone world to figure that out.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate how they seem to have forgotten that. But I think the idea of having that understanding of the people and the experience and the humans behind the products or the customers is the real value there, because he was, especially when it comes to unboxing and the whole experience, even just opening up a package. So many times, I have to feel like I'm getting a hacksaw or a chainsaw to get some of the packaging. But I remember every time I've opened the old phones in the back, iPhones in the past, it was almost like a euphoric experience, because just the way the box opened and peeling off the packaging and stuff was so satisfying. And that was part of the design. And it's something that, again, it's they probably wrote down all those steps of the client experience, like the hospitality guy did, where it's, what are all the steps they go through? How do you make that and more than just a checkbox to get to the thing they want, but how do you make it the thing they want is the actual experience of opening the phone, not just the phone itself.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. I love their packaging and love everything that they do.
And so for someone who's listening and goes, okay, we need to start changing the way we're doing things or implementing this, what is the first step you recommend people take to get away from the shiny object syndrome and really implement what we've been talking about today?
Yeah, there was a long time when we went from leadership books and in the 80s and 90s and talking about all these leadership techniques, then we kind of moved towards these management books, more practical, tactical tips to do this in your business. And somewhere in all of that, the idea of a mission and a vision became defined so many different ways and became almost cliche that I think a lot of people have stepped away from that. But my question is, where are you going in your business? Where are you going? And what is your main goal? Why do you exist as a business? I use the example a lot. My oldest son years ago would not go to bed, which is, typical with kids when they're being insubordinate. And so I challenged him to a race because, competitions, I don't know where he gets his competitiveness from, but he wanted to compete. And so I started racing him up the stairs, and the whole time he's going up the stairs, he keeps looking back over his shoulder. And so I used this as an opportunity to win the race. And I ran right past him and sat on the edge of his bed, and he huffs and puffs into the room and is all upset. He's 3 or 4 at the time. And he's like, "Why'd you win?" I was like, "Well, first of all, because I'm bigger, faster, stronger. I'm going to win." But I said, the real reason I won was because you were so busy looking over your shoulder at where I was that you're not focused on the mission and where you were going. And I think that's just a lesson that we need to learn as business leaders. We need to resurrect that and say, hey, what is the vision and mission? And we don't need to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on consultants. And sorry to all my consultants friends that do that. But I'm trying to figure out what is that exact thing. But at the core, what is it? Are you Chick-fil-A making the best chicken sandwich? Are you Apple trying to make minimalistic computers and change lifestyles? Or even more simple, are you Seth Godin, who's trying to be the marketing guru, or Dave Ramsey? When I say his name, you're thinking of debt or money. Like, there's certain people that the problem that they solve immediately, and what that is for your business, whether that's the best cup of coffee at the local coffee shop, or the easiest search engine to use, or the most efficient software for this category. Whatever it is that you do, what the problem is that you fundamentally solve. So don't leave it. Don't get distracted from it. And then say, okay, is what I'm doing today going to make that better or worse? I think Jeff Bezos said it best at an AWS conference years ago. He said, I know that what's not going to change is people wanting products cheaper and faster and more conveniently, and access to a whole wide range of products. So whether AI is doing that, robots, drones, or anything else, that's not changing. And it's never changed since the day that they were in their shoebox of an office that you can see the handwritten Amazon.com sign in the late 90s. So I think that's what we have to get back to as business leaders.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for connecting with me today, Ryan. If you enjoyed this episode of the Human Connection Podcast, please leave a comment, and subscribe. If you want to connect with myself or Ryan, check out the links in the show notes. And remember, no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Happy connecting.